It's an ordinary Tuesday. You wake up, grab your phone, and before checking your messages, you open the brokerage app. Not because you're anxious, not because the market opened and you need to act. You open it because another 1370 dropped into your account while you were sleeping. Not from one stock, from three. You close the app, go make coffee, and that thought doesn't last more than 8 seconds in your head. That's what nobody shows you. Not the euphoria, not the chart climbing, not the Twitter post with the account statement. The reality of weekly dividends is quieter, slower, and at the same time stranger than anything you've read about it. And that's exactly what we're going to explore here. Before building the portfolio, you had a picture in your head. 12 stocks, each one paying every week. A kind of passive income machine that works while you don't. You did the math. If each stock pays an average of 0.23 per share per week and you hold 200 shares of each, that's $46 per week, per holding. 12 holdings, $46 each. That's $550 per week. Around $208 per month. You stopped. Read the number again. $208 per month in dividends. And thought, that covers my cost of living. What happens after you think that is the goal stops being abstract. It gets an address, a deadline, a face. And that's where the real journey begins, because the number exists. But the path to it is not what you imagined. You didn't build the portfolio in a day. It took 6 months. Not because you were lazy, because money doesn't show up all at once. You set aside a portion of your paycheck every month, $230, $345, 1 month, $115 because the car needed repairs. You researched every holding before buying. Historical dividend yield, payment consistency, whether the company had ever cut its dividend, whether the sector was cyclical or stable. You learned the difference between a high yield and a sustainable dividend. That difference cost time. Not money, time. And at the end of 6 months, you had 12 holdings. Not all of them paid weekly at first. Some paid monthly, others quarterly. The weekly dividend portfolio wasn't ready. It was under construction. You kept adjusting, swapped 2 holdings that paid irregularly for others with more predictable track records. You gave up a bit of yield in the process. But you gained predictability. And predictability, you would learn later, is the most underrated asset in an income portfolio. You remember the first week all 12 holdings paid. It wasn't dramatic. Monday, 2 deposits, $980 and $650. Wednesday, 3 more, $1930, $1175, $570. Friday, the last 2 of that week, $1660 and $780. Total for the week, $77.45. You looked at the number, $77.45. Not 552s, $77. And here is the first reality check nobody prepares you for. You had calculated the maximum possible number, with 200 shares of each holding, with the highest dividends the portfolio had ever paid in its history. But you weren't there yet. You still had 60, 80, sometimes 100 shares of each holding. The portfolio was growing, but it wasn't yet the portfolio you had imagined. And $77.45 per week is $309.80 per month. Not 22.8, but also not 0. And here begins a distinction that will define who persists and who quits. $77.45 per week is a real amount. Not enough to replace a salary, but enough to be real. You can feel it, move it, decide what to do with it. And that feeling of something real, even if small, is the fuel that carries you into the next month. 3 months later, you noticed something subtle had shifted in your head. Not in your account. In your head. You stopped thinking about money as a single block. Before, the paycheck arrived. You paid the bills. Whatever was left went to investing or sat in the account. Now you spent the week watching small movements. A Tuesday with 2 deposits. A Thursday with 3. A Sunday with nothing. Because none of the holdings pay on Sundays. But you knew that Monday had 2 coming. You didn't become obsessed. That's important to say. Most people who imagine receiving frequent dividends think they'll spend every hour checking the app. That's not what happened. What happened was different. You developed a calmer relationship with money, because money never sat completely still anymore. There was always something arriving, small, predictable, no drama. And when something is always arriving, the anxiety of, I need to save everything because I don't know when more will come, starts to fade. This doesn't solve all your financial problems, but it changes the frequency of the anxiety. And frequency matters. In the 5th month, one of your stocks cut its dividend. not reduced, cut. A company that had been paying $0.18 per share every week simply announced it wouldn't pay for the next quarter while it reinvested profits into expansion. You didn't lose the position, but you lost the flow. And that taught you something no dividend video actually teaches you. An income portfolio is not static. It needs maintenance. Like a car you drive every day. It works, but it demands attention. You had to reallocate. Use that week's dividends to buy more shares of another holding, cover the gap. It wasn't a crisis. It was an adjustment. But the difference between treating it as a crisis versus an adjustment depends on one thing only: understanding from the start that this will happen. Not maybe, will. Companies cut dividends. Sectors go through bad cycles. Holdings that paid 0.26 per share one quarter pay 0.08 the next. The portfolio of 12 stocks paying every week is not a perfect machine. It's a living ecosystem, and you are the gardener. You reached month 12. At this point, the portfolio was more mature. You held, on average, 140 shares of each position, some with 180, others still at 90 because the price had risen and you were buying fewer shares with the same money. The portfolio's average dividend yield was 8.4% per year. Not 12%, not 15%. 8.4%. That's a real number for a portfolio built with consistency and not speculation. With the capital you had accumulated, $23,500 invested in total, 8.4% per year meant $1,174 annually in dividends. $164.50 per month, $41.15 per week. You stopped, looked at the number, and compared it to what you had calculated a year earlier. $208 per month versus $164.50 per month. The gap is enormous. But this isn't disappointment. It's calibration. You realize the 1,208 number required capital you didn't have yet. It required something around $314,000 invested in this portfolio to generate that flow at 8.4% yield. You had $20,500. You were 7.5% of the way there. And here is the second reality check that separates those who understand from those who quit. $164.50 per month is not the destination. It's proof the engine works. The destination is built with time and consistency, not with the map you drew before you started. You could have withdrawn the $164.50. Some people do, but you didn't. You reinvested, not because someone told you to, because you noticed something that wasn't in the original calculation. If you reinvest $164.50 per month, added to the $230 you were already contributing every month, you effectively start contributing $394.50 per month, without working one extra hour, without asking for a raise, without cutting a single expense. The portfolio was starting to feed itself, slowly, almost imperceptibly. But it was. In month 13, monthly dividends were $170. In month 14, $179. Not because the market went up, because you had bought more shares with the previous month's dividend money. Compound interest is not a concept. It's this. It's you receiving $171, buying more stock, and the next month receiving $170. It's slow, it's real, and it's relentless. Are you on this journey right now? Are you in month 1, or have you already reached year 2? Tell me in the comments what stage you're at, and what was the biggest expectation adjustment you had to make along the way. In month 18, you went through something different. The market fell, not a little. 2 of your holdings dropped more than 18% in 3 weeks. The portfolio's value on paper shrank by $3,150, but the dividends kept arriving, not in the same amounts. One of them was reduced, but they arrived. And here is something you only understand when you're inside a frequent income portfolio. You didn't feel the panic you would have felt before having the portfolio. Not because you're brave, but because the flow existed. When you see money arriving, even $34 in a week when the market is falling, your brain processes the situation differently. The $3,150 drop on paper is an abstraction. The $34 deposit on Tuesday is concrete. And concrete anchors. You didn't sell. You bought more of the holdings that had fallen, using those weeks' dividends. 2 months later, one of them had already recovered 11%. The other took longer. But you weren't looking at the portfolio's value. You were looking at the flow. And the flow was the compass. In month 24, you had $36,450 invested. Not because the market gave you a gift, because you contributed $230 per month, reinvested dividends every month, and stayed disciplined in the moments the market tried to convince you that you were wrong. Monthly dividends were at $256. You had more than doubled the monthly flow in 2 years. But the biggest change wasn't in the account. It was in the way you saw time. Before the portfolio, a month was a month. You worked, got paid, spent, tried to save something. Now each month carried a different weight. Every month that passed, the portfolio got a little stronger. Every reinvested dividend was one more share. Every additional share was a few more cents in the next dividend. You stopped thinking of decades as something distant. You started seeing year 10 as something being built right now, week by week, deposit by deposit. That's not motivational. It's mathematical. Year 10 exists because year 2 existed. And year 2 exists because the Tuesday of month 1 existed. It's time to say what a lot of people don't say. 12 stocks paying weekly dividends is not a get-rich-quick strategy. It's not a way to quit your job in 6 months. It's not a machine that runs by itself without maintenance. It's an income structure that demands real capital to generate real flow. Time for reinvestment to make sense. Periodic attention to adjust what isn't working. Emotional tolerance to hold on when the market falls and the news tells you to sell. The good part is that all of these things are built. They're not innate talents. They're skills you develop month by month as the portfolio grows. In the beginning, you'll make the wrong call on some holding. You'll pick one that cuts its dividend. You'll hesitate to buy when the price drops. You'll reinvest less one month because life charged you unexpectedly. All of that is normal. All of that is the real process. The real process is not the straight line you saw in the YouTube video with the animated graph. The real process is irregular, human, and persistent. And at the end of 5 years, not 2, not 10, you'll have built something most people never build. A flow that doesn't depend on you working on that specific day. Still small, but real and growing. You're going to open the app next Tuesday, and you're going to see a number. It might be $13. It might be $51. It might be $660 if one of the holdings reduced its payment. It won't be $208, not yet. But it will be a number that wasn't there last week. Created not by your effort that day. Created by the effort of a month ago. Of 6 months ago. By the decision you made to reinvest instead of withdraw. Most people won't understand what that is. They'll see the number and think it's small. They'll compare it to a salary and conclude it's not worth it. But you know something they don't. Today's number is not the finish line. It's one of the lines in the contract that time is honoring with you. And time, unlike any boss, bank, or market, always keeps what it signs.